Satyam Param Dhimai. Om Satyam Param Dhimai. Om Satyam Param Dhimai. Om Satyam Param Dhimai. Om Satyam Param Dhimai.
Feel the breath as it moves in and out. Sense the breath merging with the blood and moving throughout the body. The sensitivity of the whole body. Relax the body. Start with the head. Make a conscious effort to relax the body, the forehead, the eyes, around the eyes, the ears, nose, two cheeks, the two lips, the tongue, the teeth, the gums, the chin, release the jawbone, the neck, two shoulders, the two hands, the back, chest, stomach, the two legs. Feel the body deeply relaxed. It's totally relaxed. There's no movement in the body. It's totally empty. Just the going in and going out of air, the breath. In this empty space, feel your own presence, as if your presence is coming from a higher dimension and occupying the body. Feel the presence, I am, apropos apropos. Feel it. Feel the beauty of the presence, the upliftment of the presence. Just to be, not to be anything, just to be. Feel the breath, feel the presence. Try to divide your attention and feel both simultaneously. Feeling of breath, feeling of presence. Hold both together. Slowly the music will go down. Try to hold both the feeling of breath and the feeling of presence. Try to hold the presence throughout the talk for 1.25 hours. Slowly open. Breathing, Jai. Now, today we are going to talk about right knowledge. The next sutra is the 5 vrittis. They are pramad, viparyaya, vikalpa, nindra, smriti. Pramad, right knowledge. Viparyaya, incorrect deduction or wrong knowledge. Vikalpa, imagination or fancy. Nindra, sleep or passivity. Or smriteya, memory. These are the 5 modifications of the mind. Now, today we will look at pramad, right knowledge. Now, the next sutra, so I'll take 6 and 7 together. The next sutra says, Pratyaksh, Anuman, Agama, Pramani. These are the 3 forms of right knowledge. Pratyaksh, Aksh means eyes, Pratyaksh means in front of the eyes, or Aksh you can take as any of the sense organs, in front of the sense organs, direct perception, right? Anuman is inference, correct deduction, Anuman, and Agam, the normal translation, very difficult word to translate, the words of those who have realized, the words of, it is a written testimony, a kind of, which we take as a commandment, somebody who has realized the truth, we take it as Agam, what he says. These are the normal descriptions in what you call translations. Now, before going into this, I just would like to touch a little bit upon cosmology. And I'm going to bring in 2 cosmologies. Today we'll talk about one I'll talk about much later. The first is the cosmology of the Gayatri mantra. And it is all my Guru's teachings which he wrote down, he took this cosmology as a background for that. So I'm going to explain this on the board. Later on, I would also like to go into Gurdjieff's cosmology, which he calls the ray of creation. But maybe some other day we will talk about that. Now the Gayatri mantra goes Om Bhu, Om Bhuva, Om Swaha, Om Maha, Om Jana, Om Tapa, Om Satyam. These are the 7 stages of the Gayatri mantra. Bhu, Bhuva, Swaha, Maha, Jana, Tapa, Satyam. Right? So, every Hindu should understand this cosmology. This is the basic cosmology behind the whole Hindu thought. So, we just try to have a look at what it means and try to understand it in a simple way. My Guru has written a whole big book on it, so it's... Now, my Guru says there are 2 circles. The first circle, he calls as creation. The second circle he calls as existence. This circle has three universes. Bhuva, Swaha. The physical or cellular universe, or cellular. Next is the molecular or astral. And the last is electronic or mental. Bhuva, Swaha, cellular, molecular, electronic. These three universes. This he calls as existence. Existence. Right. These are surrounded by a kind of Lakshman Rekha. They are surrounded by a circle. In his book Meetings with Remarkable Men, Gurdjieff talks about his childhood, and there he says that he was born in the somewhere in the Central Caucasus, Armenia or Azerbaijan, somewhere there, maybe in Armenia, and there was a nomadic tribe called the Yezdis, and he used to play with these Yazdi boys, and they had a game where if you drew a circle around a boy, that boy, he could not come out of the circle till somebody broke the circle. Right? He would have to remain in that circle. Now this was some conditioning in that tribe, in that thing. If somebody drew a circle around you, you could not come out of the circle. Similarly, this is existence. It is surrounded by some form of very, very subtle matter, which he calls as Maha. So this is surrounded by some kind of subtle substance called Maha. Maha means huge, massive. The full name is Mahakaal, the big time, the big time. Now, to move from this existence, you go to something called creation. Now, what is creation made of? So, creation also has three levels. This is called as Jana. This is called as Tapa. This is called as Satyam. I mean, if you're saying the Gayatri mantra, this is the background to the Gayatri mantra. Unless we've understood this, we don't know what we are saying. Right? So, now we'll start from here. Satyam means the absolute. Paramatma. Divine wholeness. Unmanifest. there is no way we can imagine what this means. It is just unimaginable, vast emptiness full of the highest form of vibration, which even if we cannot even conceive of, which we cannot even imagine of, because there is nothing there, there is no instrument through which we can imagine what it means. It is unmanifest divine wholeness, the Paramatma, but avyakta Paramatma, not the vyakta Paramatma. So, that is called as Satyam. Now again, within Satyam, my Guru has gone in and made different stages, but I am not going to go into that. Right? Now, the second is the Vyakta Paramatma, the manifest divine wholeness. Tapa. The manifest, Vyakta Paramatma. Avyakta, Vyakta. A few days before he was going to leave, my Guru, he called me and he said, "What is the ultimate key?" So I said that, "Sir, Omkar is the ultimate." He says, "You're wrong. You're wrong. Tapa. Tapa. The ultimate key to open the lock. And that is the mantra Ram." The mantra Ram. Right? Ram means Tapa. Ram means Tapa. Tapa means suffering. Not suffering as we see it. Conscious suffering. Here, see, something very, very deep is implied over here. Very, very deep is implied over here. And it's implied that supreme consciousness, which we call as Paramatma, the divine wholeness, in giving rise to this existence, to moving into this, what you call, this process of creation, going into this process, there is a kind of suffering involved. There is a kind of suffering involved. Like when a mother is giving birth to a child, when that Paramatma is giving birth, that is why we call that process of giving birth as Gayatri. That process of giving birth. So there is a process in that. So there is, even though there is joy in creation, there is a suffering. There is a suffering. And that suffering from the avyakta Paramatma, he was unmanifest, he became manifest to give rise to creation. And to give rise to creation, there is a suffering involved, and that is why this is called as Tapa. Tapa means heat. Tapa means friction. Tapa means austerity. As long as we have personal suffering, we can never identify with this suffering, the conscious suffering, the suffering of the divine, right? And which is every moment. But we have our personal sufferings. My tea was cold in the morning, right? So I have my personal suffering, right? And as long as there is any kind of personal suffering, we can never identify with this Tapa, the divine suffering. And the joy of samadhi, the joy of enlightenment comes with with taking part of the suffering of the whole. I don't know if I'm coming across in this. So the very joy of enlightenment, of being free of the three worlds, in that you take on a part of the divine suffering. So there is joy and suffering moving together, but not the suffering as we see it. Something happened to my son, this person I loved died, etc., etc. I fell ill, I got this. These are all our personal sufferings. And we cannot understand what this is till we are free of those personal sufferings. So, this divine wholeness, the unmanifest, it wanted to manifest why is a wrong question. You're not allowed to ask, because people used to go to Buddha, right, and they would ask this question and Buddha would say, wrong question. These questions, before you come, these questions are not allowed to be asked. And the question why is not allowed to be asked. Right? But somewhere, if somebody asks me, I'll say he got indigestion. Right? So, that unmanifest became the manifest. Now, why is suffering so close to God? Why is suffering so close? Can you understand what I'm trying to say? Because in that suffering we are partaking of something from, let it be our personal suffering. We are mechanical in that personal suffering. We don't know. But in that personal suffering, the roots of that personal suffering come from here. And that is why in suffering, if we can make use of suffering in the right way, move from involuntary suffering to voluntary suffering and voluntary suffering to conscious suffering, then we can understand what the divine wholeness is, Paramatma, not Atma, Paramatma. We can realize that, right? Now, this was divine wholeness, and then it became Jana. Jana is divine fragment. Atma, the spirit. Yes.
Is the divine suffering like when you are meditating and you don't eat for a couple of days or you don't speak for, is that divine suffering?
The divine suffering is ecstatic. There is deep ecstasy in the divine suffering.
The ecstasy is a result of the divine suffering.
It's deep ecstasy. Like the ecstasy you felt when you were becoming a mother. So that is a small, what do you call, trailer of that suffering. So, and that is why I'm getting back, push on this thing, but see, the male does not know this secret. What? The male, marriage is the male learns this secret from the female. Because this deep secret of existence, of how to give birth, the male does not know that secret. And the whole idea of marriage is that the male understands this secret. And she understands something which is not in her, which is in the male. They exchange secrets. They exchange secrets. That is the whole idea of marriage. So, he wants to learn what it is to give birth. How the Paramatma gave birth to the Atma. Can you understand what we are talking about? We are talking of something on a different scale altogether. Right? How the Paramatma gave birth to the Atma. And don't think that this is something which happened in time, because again when we think of time, we are thinking of before and after. It is every moment. Every moment. This suffering is now. The suffering is now. And Gurdjieff used to call this the suffering of the absolute. The suffering of the absolute. Now, from this tapa, there became many atmas, divine fragments. Right? Now, Jana. The meaning of the word Jana means to give birth. To give birth. Where can we relate with that energy of Jana? See, suffering relates us to the energy of Tapa. What will relate us to the energy of Jana? To give birth, to create, creation. What will relate us to that energy in life? Creativity. Creativity. When I am creating anything, the energy is coming from Jana. It could be anything. It could be a canvas painting. Right? If I say I'm writing these notes, am I doing it as a baggage that I have to give a lecture in the evening, or am I doing it with a what you call inner attitude of creativity? Can you see? It is doing the same thing. Right? So we do the mundane chores of life. I may be going to my job. I may be doing so many things in life. But if I can bring the energy of creativity to every small thing I do, then I'm getting this energy from a very, very high source. It could be just gardening, cutting some leaves or whatever. But am I doing it with the attitude of creativity? Right? So then I connect with this. Now, from here, okay, one more thing I'll just. Now, in this movement, just take this as a fall in vibration. Fall in vibration. So, the unmanifest divine wholeness is highest vibration. Then manifest divine wholeness, little fall in vibration. And then comes divine fragment. The vibrations have fallen further. Vibrations have fallen further. Now, in this movement from Tapa to Jana, in this movement, two byproducts are created. Two byproducts. The first is what we call as Chitti, universal mind. Prana, the matter of the universe. What matter built the universe? What was the matter through which the whole universe was built? Where did that matter come from? Right? So there was a movement from Tapa to Jana, from divine wholeness to divine fragment, Paramatma to Atma, and that movement of vibrations was so, the drop was so big from wholeness to fragment, the drop was so big that two byproducts came out of that. Two byproducts. The first was Chitti. This Chitti, it immediately replicated this. Can you understand what I am trying to say? This material which came out, it immediately formed a mirror image of this. It replicated, duplicated this. Right? And it duplicated as Swaha, Bhuva, Bhu. This whole existence is made out of this substance called Chitti, the universal mind. Another name we can call it is Prana. Prana. But the word in the Yoga Sutra used, the final sutra, is Chitti Shakti Iti. Am I coming across in this? Just please ask questions, because this cosmology will become more, it is the background of the whole Hindu thought.
Gujarati માં સમજાવવાનું
Gujarati માં સમજાવો.
I quickly ask a question before I get started. So when Tapa was coming into Jana and the fragments were becoming smaller, was it necessary to have byproducts? Who determines that? Why was there?
That is what I am saying. This is the cosmology. This is the bag. You have to take this as like an astronomer will come and say the sun the earth goes round the sun. This is the cosmology of the solar system. You understand? Right?
It's also given that the universal mind will duplicate that.
Yes. Immediately the universal mind duplicated this. It formed what we call as our universe, or the many universes called Bhuva, Swaha. That is Swaha duplicated, Satyam. Bhuva duplicated, Tapa. And Bhu duplicated, Jana. Right? Okay, I'll go to Gujarati now. આખું ગાયત્રી મંત્રની પાછળ એક કોસ્મોલોજી છે કે આ કઈ રીતે ઉત્પન્ન થયું. જે ઓરિજિનલ ગાયત્રી મંત્ર છે, ઓમ ભૂ, ઓમ ભુવ, ઓમ સ્વહ, ઓમ મહા, ઓમ જન, ઓમ તપ, ઓમ સત્યમ. અને 7 લોક કહેવાય આપણે ત્યાં, 7 લોક કહેવાય. રાઈટ? હવે આને 2 ભાગમાં મારા ગુરુએ વેચી દીધા. એક સર્કલ ના 3 ભાગ, એક સર્કલમાં 3 ભાગ ને વચ્ચે મહા. 3 here, in between મહા. 2 ભાગમાં વેચી દીધા. પહેલો છે સત્યમ, ઓમ સત્યમ. સત્યમ એટલે પરમાત્મા, પણ અવ્યક્ત પરમાત્મા. હવે એ પરમાત્મામાંથી વ્યક્ત પરમાત્મા આવ્યું. એ વ્યક્ત પરમાત્મા એટલે તપ. વ્યક્ત પરમાત્મા. અને વ્યક્ત પરમાત્મામાંથી આત્મા આવ્યું, જન. આને ક્રિએશન એ કહેતા. હવે આ આત્મા આમાં આવે છે. શેની અંદર આવે છે? એક્ઝિસ્ટન્સની અંદર. હવે આ તપમાં પરમાત્મામાંથી આત્મા બન્યું તો 2 બાય પ્રોડક્ટ નીકળ્યા. 2 બાય પ્રોડક્ટની ગુજરાતીમાં શું કહેશું ખબર નહીં, પણ રાઈટ. અને એક હતું ચિત્તી, મન, જેને આપણે મન, બાય પ્રોડક્ટ માઇન્ડ, બટ યુનિવર્સલ માઇન્ડ, નોટ ઇન્ડિવિજ્યુઅલ માઇન્ડ, યુનિવર્સલ માઇન્ડ. આખી આપણી સૃષ્ટિ જે છે ભૂ, ભુવ, સ્વહ, આ પદાર્થમાંથી બનેલું છે. ચિત્તી, આ પદાર્થમાંથી બનેલું છે ચિત્તી. રાઈટ? એ પદાર્થ જેવું એ બહાર નીકળ્યું, એ આ 3નું એને ડ્યુપ્લિકેશન કર્યું. સત્યમનું ડ્યુપ્લિકેશન હતું સ્વહ, તપનું ડ્યુપ્લિકેશન હતું ભુવ, અને જનનું ડ્યુપ્લિકેશન હતું ભૂ. રાઈટ? હવે અહીંથી આત્મા અંદર આવે છે, પણ અંદર આત્મા આવે તો એ એમને ન રહી શકે, એને કપડાં પહેરવા પડે. જેમ અહીંથી આપણો એસ્ટ્રોનોટ સ્પેસમાં જાય તો એને સ્પેસ સૂટ પહેરવું પડે. આ જે કપડાં પહેરવા પડે એને આપણે નામ આપ્યું એસેન્સ. જૂના જમાનામાં જે થિયોસોફિકલ સોસાયટી હતું એને નામ આપ્યું હતું એસ્ટ્રલ બોડી, સૂક્ષ્મ શરીર, astral body. Now from here the divine fragment wants to enter into existence. It is not allowed into existence just like that. It has to wear clothes, a space suit. That space suit which it wears is made of the planets, graholu. It is made of the planets. We called it as essence. We've introduced a new word this time, essence. Right? The old theosophists called it as astral body. We can call it as Jeev, the soul. So before this it was the spirit, but when it comes in, it becomes the soul. It becomes the soul. Now the soul is journeying. I don't want to go into that because it's a very complicated thing. Right? What I am trying to say, that it comes down and it goes back up, and when it wants to escape out, it has to escape out of something called Maha. Mahakaal, the big time. What is this whole cloud surrounding the three worlds? Mahakaal. So my guru used to say, one thing in the whole, all the universes is indestructible, and that is memory. Memory can never be destroyed. In the Mahabharata, memory is represented by Ashwatthama. Ashwatthama cannot be killed. Right? When Arjun wants to kill Ashwatthama, Krishna says, you cannot kill him. I can take the money from his forehead, and Yudhishthir will wear that money, but he will be doomed to roam the earth till the earth is there forever and ever. He is a Chiranjeevi. So in the Mahabharata, this memory is represented by Ashwatthama. Right? Mahakaal. Today we are going to talk about knowledge. That is why I wanted to bring in this cosmology a little. So when I was asking him that what does this Mahakaal mean? What does it mean? So he says, all knowledge is stored there in deep freeze forever and ever. He says, we talk about Krishna coming and Ram coming, but if you can enter into Mahakaal, Krishna has come so many times and Ram has also come so many times. So, our knowledge comes from books. Our knowledge comes from all sorts of outside things. But within us are these 7 lobes. And if we can connect to something called Mahakaal, then knowledge flows in automatically. If we can connect to that. That is why I wanted to just bring in this cosmology a little bit for us.
Is this the same as Akashic Records? I've read somewhere. Is that
Akashic Records is a term used by Madame Blavatsky. And Madame Blavatsky, William Judge and Colonel Olcott, in around the 1870s somewhere, I can't give you the exact time, they created something called the Theosophical Society, the Universal Brotherhood of Religions. Right? And it was, I think, the first step which a person took, an individual took to be free of religion and take just the word spirituality without any coloring of any religion. Because religions have created divisions, they're more like viruses. So, religions have created divisions. Can there be spirituality free of religion? Right? And she took this great step, Madame Blavatsky, and she wrote a couple of beautiful books. One was The Secret Doctrine, and one was Isis Unveiled, and in which the Secret Doctrine, she talks about this area, the Mahakaal, where she calls all the Akashic records are preserved there. And many great souls came out of the Theosophical movement. There was Alice Bailey, and Alice Bailey has written a number of excellent books. Many others were there. I mean, this translation which we are using for the Yoga Sutras is from Light on the Soul by Alice Bailey. The translation which we are putting in English. It is her work, Alice Bailey's Light on the Soul. And the ones which I many times quote are not Alice Bailey, but by another theosophist, William Judge. So these 3 people, Madame Blavatsky, William Judge and Colonel Olcott, they formed the Theosophical Society. They started using those words, Akashic Records. So you can say it's the same thing, Mahakaal. So all knowledge available to man is preserved for eternity and eternity in this area between this and this, right? And that knowledge can be, you can connect to that knowledge can flow through you. Of course, when it flows through you, it will flow through your own language, your own sanskar, your own memory patterns. Now, which question is not asked? Which question have you all forgotten to ask?
This one.
No, about this. Which question have you forgotten?
Yeah, I'm asking. There's a second, the second.
The second byproduct.
Yeah.
The second byproduct, Omkar. You see, in that divine wholeness becoming divine fragment, two things came out. A substance called Chitti and a sound called Omkar. A sound called Omkar. So we have actually two theories of how Bhuva Swaha was made, how this universe. One says it was made out of Chitti, the other says it was made out of sound. The other says it was made out of sound, right? The fourth Bible by John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And the Word was God. Right? So, the other thing was Omkar. And both the theories are absolutely correct. Right? You look at it from this way, it is mind. You look at it from this way, it is sound. Whichever way. These are two aspects of the same thing.
So, the intention is really to escape the.
Yes.
Yeah. That.
I'll sit down now, I think. Yeah.
Escaping Mahakaal.
Yeah. Escape through Mahakaal. Yeah.
So when that happens, the knowledge base disappears, no? Because then only an existence remains.
So what would it mean? What would it mean? Just tell me, in normal terms, in everyday life, what would it mean? Supposing I want to start today, forget about this cosmology. Forget about this. But we are thinking of Mahakaal, that we know that tomorrow this thing is going to be a Lakshman Rekha to us. Right? And we have to overcome it. So what would it mean? What would it mean? In our normal daily living, how will we start working from now? Of course, we will bring in consciousness, that is the first step, but how will we start working? You know, it's the big time, it is also the big memory. Okay, so now how will we start working? In our normal relationships, how will we start working? But we get carried away by associations. By associations. Right? Now, how do associations work in our daily living?
It's the way we react. It's the way we react, perhaps to react in a better way, in the right way. It's like reaction to events like
associations.
it's preset.
It's preset. Now we are trying to make ourselves free of those associations. And I'm just talking about very normal. What he's saying is right, but I want to break it down right to very normal, very ordinary level. Supposing you're wearing a purple pullover. And you say, when I went to buy this pullover, I met him in the shop. Right? Now, what happened? What do I say?
Like pause and think about the decision.
No, in my normal mechanical way, what do I say? I'll say that, oh, I've been looking for him for so many days. Or I have this important work with, I've forgotten about your pullover. You're talking about your... Where has this come from? Memory. Can you see in that very moment I become a slave of memory? Mahakaal. Can you see? I become a slave of memory. Mahakaal. Now the minute I'm aware of it, I say I don't want to say it now. I want to listen to your pullover. I block it. And I consciously detach myself from that, what do you call that, attack of memory which I got. And in that moment I'm free of that association. Understand what I'm trying to say? You may be talking about something totally different. You may be saying that, okay, this accident happened with me. Right? And the minute you say that, I'll say, oh, 6 months ago I was taking my car this way and I just missed a bus like this. Can you see? That you said something but I was immediately controlled by memory. Right? Can I pause there? I'll bring it into the conversation, but I'll bring it in now after a few minutes, consciously. Right? If I want to say it. Or if I feel something will come out of it in the conversation. If it is just mental vomiting, it is just verbal vomiting, then I don't want to say it. Right? But I have consciously freed myself from memory. See? So we keep making this effort to free ourselves from memory. You're talking on the phone with somebody, he says something and suddenly you go back into this association, immediately pause over there. If you have to say it after 30 seconds, after 1 minute. But in that moment, free yourself from the association. Because one day we are going to walk through, we'll have to free ourselves of the big time. And all this is a part of that big time. All this is a part of that big time. I have not talked yet about associations. There's a whole web network of associations within us.
Let me ask, this was a thought in the day, is what brings people together associated, like me sitting here or this whole group of people here together, or my chances of meeting a stranger, a beggar, what is that relationship? Is that preset? Is it, or is it just destiny, or is it perchance, or because it's all of association? I was trying to understand that.
What has brought you here is your magnetic center has brought you here.
But the relationship with everybody
What makes time?
Another time, I have to discuss this related to this.
What makes time? What constitutes time? What is time? See, it's very difficult for us, no?
Another day,
Birth to death. Birth to death. It's a straight line. Of course, it's not a straight line, which Kanubhai yesterday corrected me. It's not a straight line, but if I say it in any other way, we will not understand it. We will not understand it. Right? So, it is a straight line. We see time as this straight line. And this is because of our way of perception. What gives rise to this perception? How do we make this perception of time? Why do we perceive time as moving from the past to the future? Time does not have to move in this way. But it is this idiot brain of ours which perceives time in this way. Supposing we say before this was an essence. Right? And this essence took on a body. But this essence was before, this essence was after. Now, if the body is talking to the essence, am I coming across? If the body, I was young and then I became middle-aged and now my hair is grey and I am old and I have so many children, the essence won't know what he's talking about. The essence does not understand this concept of time only. The essence understands time as something totally different. Can you get what I'm trying to say? Because our consciousness cannot attach to the essence, we think this is the only time, moving from the past to the future. Today I was going to talk about sensual thinking, but tomorrow I'll talk about sensual thinking and psychological thinking. Pratyaksh, sensual thinking, Anuman, psychological thinking. We'll talk about it tomorrow. But this is a typical outcome of our sensual thinking. See, we think with the five senses. We don't think with the mind. Truth is a bag of gold coins, out of which 3 gold coins have fallen out, and the senses see that and say this is the truth. And science makes a big thing about it. They will make small senses like a microscope or a telescope, just an extension of the senses, and this is the truth and this is the truth. But truth is in that bag of coins inside, and there is no way the 5 senses can see it. And this is all we are trying to do. We are stuck to this way of thinking, sensual thinking, and it becomes so pathological at times. We were in New Zealand, both of us, and somebody is talking about some bhajan mandali. Just imagine this. Right? And he's talking about the bhajans and how ash was falling from the roof when they were doing the bhajans, and ash was falling from the ceilings. Now, can you think how we have degenerated? Truth has nothing to do with what you're seeing with your physical eyes. Whatever miracles you see, it has nothing to do with that. This is a result of our wrong thinking. Can you see what I'm trying to say? And this is happening all over India. All over India today. Spirituality has become a blank check.
What you're saying is that the ash is falling, but...
Whether it's falling or not, it has nothing to do with truth.
But it could be a miracle, but it doesn't have to be the truth.
If that is a miracle, then any magician can perform a miracle. If that is a miracle. Ash falling out of some photo and ash falling out of some, wall or something of that sort.
So is there no such thing as miracle?
What?
So is there no such thing as miracle?
It has nothing to do with a miracle. It's a pathological
No,
imbalance.
I'm just saying the concept of miracle.
Huh?
No, I'm asking, I'm not talking about the ash. I'm just saying miracle in general, like the concept of miracle.
See, there is a world of subtle vibration. Yeah, and something happens over there which we cannot see in this world. And if that could be shown in this world, it would be a miracle.
Okay, so miracle is
But it's not a miracle. Somebody who can see in that world of vibrations knows it is not a miracle. But somebody who only knows how to see with the physical eye will say it is a miracle. And truth is the most simple thing. It has nothing to do with miracles. You understand what I'm trying to say? Truth cannot be conveyed, so sometimes it uses the language of miracles. Christ said that at the marriage of Cana, the water became wine. Right? Now they're talking about something else, talking about something totally different. 7 miracles which Christ performed. The first one was the marriage at Cana. Right? It's talking of the Christ. If you follow Christ, the lower will become the higher. The lower is water, the higher is wine. It's a metaphorical way of putting something. But everybody is looking for physical miracles with their sensual thinking, and truth has nothing to do with sensual thinking. You have to think in a different way. So if you're just looking at sensual thinking, that this was birth and this was death, then you will see time only in this way. You will never be able to go into that bag of gold coins and see a different way of seeing time. Am I? See, we use the word eternity. If you ask anybody, they'll say eternity means infinite extension of time. This line keeps on going on forever and ever. But if you knew the true meaning of the word eternity, you wouldn't ask this question. You would know why people meet. You understand what I'm trying to say? Some intellectual understanding of the word eternity as another dimension of time. Not as this time running forever and ever. Which movie was that? The Immortal, or which one was it? I don't remember. It goes on forever and ever. Just man's unfulfilled desires he puts in a movie. He wants to live forever. And doesn't realize that he'll keep on doing the same things forever and ever. So, this essence lives in something called eternity. Eternity. Now, let's again come back to daily living, because unless we bring these concepts to our daily living, it's going to be very difficult to understand.
But you know, Rajendra, I've seen honey come out of a worm right there in Durban. I was also lost. I've seen it.
Sir, I have seen ash flowing out of the third eye. I've seen Kambu flowing out of the third eye. It has nothing to do with spirituality. That is what I'm trying to say. Some laws are operating on a subtle level, which we think of miracles in this level, just because they are coming here. It is an imbalance.
So that shouldn't happen.
Should? It has nothing to do with the truth.
But that happens, that means there's an imbalance.
It's an imbalance. And that person I knew, every day I used to sit next to him. And he had to wear a scarf so nobody could see. If he had taken out the scarf, he would have been a big guru. People singing bhajans to him and all kinds of things.
By seeing miracles, it doesn't changes you from lower to higher. Whereas when you see the truth, it changes you from lower to the higher. There's a big difference.
Truth is simple, the most simple thing. It has nothing to do with miracles. Christ was talking to he was talking to fishermen, he was talking to shepherds. The intellectual Jews, the only intellectual who followed him was Judas. So, it was a different language he had to talk to them. So, I've seen it all. I've seen cancer being cured. I've seen so many things. But it has nothing to do with the truth. It comes back to man's desire to fulfill his unfulfilled desires. That I am ill, can somebody cure me? It's not, I am ill, let me learn the mystery of death. Can you understand what I'm trying to say? Now, this is a person who wants to know truth. Otherwise, you're just trying to extend this line into forever and forever. Right? Give me some more vitamins, give me some more this, give me some. We need a different kind of thinking, So if you can understand this term eternity, you will suddenly know why we have come together. But we cannot understand this term eternity. Now I can only show it in a geometrical way. I can't do some miracle and show it to you. I can show it to you in geometry. How does Euclidean geometry start? We learned geometry in school, and geometry was, the creator of geometry was a Greek called Euclid. And how does he start his geometry? What is the first line in Euclid's geometry? Suppose there is a point. Can you see? It all starts with supposed. It all starts with supposed. Right? So this is how geometry starts. Suppose there is a point. Right? If the point moves, it becomes a line. Right? If the line moves, it becomes a plane. And if the plane moves, it becomes a cube. It becomes a cube. Right? This is Euclidean geometry. Euclidean geometry. Suppose there is a point. If the point moves, it becomes a line. If the line moves, it becomes a plane. And if the plane moves, it becomes a cube. Length, breadth and thickness. Right? In all schools we learn this. First lesson of geometry, class 6 or whatever, I don't remember. Right? Okay. Now, this is the three-dimensional world which we see with our 5 senses. This is the three-dimensional world. All our thinking is based on this three-dimensional world. Even though God is a concept inside, when we talk about God, we'll again talk about miracles because we have to see something with our eyes. We have to see something with our eyes. We are so attached to this way of thinking, this three-dimensional universe. Now we have something inside called a mind. The mind is not limited by this three-dimensional world. Okay, now we said birth to death is a line of time. Birth to death is a line of time. What did Euclid say? Suppose there is a point and the point moves, it becomes a line. Let's take the same thing what he was talking about for space. Let us put the same projection onto time. Okay, now how is this line formed? Which points go to make this line? How does the mind conceive time? How does the mind make time? No, birth and death, okay. But what is it? What is happening with the 5 senses and the mind? What is happening? How does this line of time come?
Events.
Past and
Every moment. What is a present moment? What is a moment? Don't go by the arbitrary division of time, seconds and hours and minutes. Don't go by, that is an arbitrary division of time. How? There has to be an inner sensitivity, there has to be an inner registration, and that has to be the present moment. Now you understand what I'm trying to say? Something has to register inside. That will be the present moment. Supposing in terms of photography, we call it as a frame. What is the present moment? It is one frame. The shutter opened, the shutter closed. Right? And one frame was captured. The photographer says one frame was captured. Right? And now they have these fast speed cameras where in 1 minute they are capturing so many frames. Right? The shutter opens, shutter closes. Sorry. Take the camera as the 5 senses. The 5 senses. They are opening, life is coming in, something is registering inside. That moment of registration is the present moment. The moment of registration is the present moment. It is one photograph. One photograph. I was born, one photograph. The 5 senses took in. One inner registration of some experience at that moment of screaming when I was born, moment of crying when I was born. I hope you've heard. There's one therapy called Primal Therapy. Have you heard of it? It was started by someone called Jana. And Jana would make his patients go back till they remembered the first scream they had, they cried when they came out of their mother's womb. Yes. And he called this as primal therapy. It's a very old therapy. And Jana made his patients, and people who were in wheelchairs for 20 years, in that scream, suddenly all their diseases went away. They would get up and start walking. Right? After Jana. So, that first scream is the first dot in this line of time of ours. And then dots keep on, because every moment the senses are taking photographs. The senses can never go out of the present moment. They are always in the present moment. I cannot taste an apple yesterday. I can only taste an apple now. Okay, you getting this?
But you can remember the taste of the apple yesterday.
That is the mind, not the senses. The mind, not the senses. Right? You can't take your eyes into yesterday. You can remember yesterday. You get what I'm trying to say? So the senses are taking this photograph. The mind collects these dots and makes the line of time from birth to death. This is how we make our line of time. This is our sensual time, result of our sensual thinking. Psychological thinking is something totally different. Can you see? We may be sitting at the same table together, right? Eating next to each other. But you're thinking of your trip to America, and I'm thinking of what's happening on my farm in India. So, in physical space we are together, but in psychological space we are at two ends of the world. Can you understand what I'm trying to say? So, the mind is not bound by the present moment. It is not bound by three-dimensional space. In the mind, nearness and distance means something totally different. Right? I may be in love with someone. She may be very, very far away. But because of that love, she is psychologically very close. Can you see what I'm trying to say? So in the three-dimensional world she is very far, but in the psychological world she is very close. So what we relate to closeness and nearness and farness as the senses does not make, in the mind it is totally different. So the mind, you can see that the mind penetrates some other dimension of time which the senses cannot. Which the senses cannot. And this is not a fact for science. You get it? And that is why it is the mind which connects the body to essence. The mind can be with the body in the present moment, and it can be with the essence in eternity, the other time. Now am I coming across what I am trying to say?
That's the reason mind can have a glimpse of God.
The mind can become still and reflect God also, because God is the essence. In the essence is God. Right? So mind is the connection. It can live in this time, it can live in that time. Only we don't make use of it. We are so attached to this time that we forget everything else, and we make God a concept also of this time. I'm going to talk on these two times tomorrow. Psychological space, physical space. It's totally different things. Right? Now just use your imagination. Supposing this line of time, which we call birth to death, were to travel, what would it form? What would it form? It would form the plane of time. And the plane of time would contain many lines of time. The plane of time would contain many lines of time. Just as one line here, you extend it, it becomes a plane, it becomes this floor. Similarly, the line of time which we call as birth to death, if it was to move in Euclidean geometry, it would become what would that mean? Can you now get a concept of essence? A concept of essence. What essence means? Essence means all our experiences. All these lines of time together means essence. I don't know if I'm getting across into this. Can you see what I'm trying to say? So, in this moment, I am the body, the part of this time moving from here to here, but I am also an essence. And essence is all my time put together, all my experience, and that is penetrating each moment of this time. And the connection between the body and that essence is the mind. Now you get what I'm trying to say. The mind can move in this time, the mind can move in that time.
How do we move in this time? How do we become aware of moving?
So from sensual thinking you move to something called psychological thinking. You see, the whole Mahabharata is in psychological thinking. We take it as a drama in sensual thinking. Jesus was talking in psychological thinking, all the parables, but we all take it in sensual thinking. Definitely Lazarus must have got up from his grave. Now, what difference did it make whether Jesus would make one man, dead man living? It made no difference. Definitely, he must have been talking about something totally different. You understand what I'm trying to say? He's trying to connect you between here to something totally different. I'm not talking about the cube of time, otherwise we'll go mad. But if there is a cube of time, it would be God, the Absolute, where everybody's experiences all together would lie in that cube of time. Now can you see this? That my essence contains all these lines. They may be innumerable. That is what we mean by eternity. Can you see how our eternities are meeting, even though physically we cannot see it? Your line and my line is crossing.
It doesn't necessarily mean if Malami is here, that means I could have met her in another timeline, but I just don't know.
The essence have crossed in some time. It is not, we cannot see this. We cannot see this. The circle always goes round. The son becomes the father becomes the son. I think the first year I was here, I took Shakuntala. I don't know, did I take Shakuntala?
Yes.
Yes. Is this clear? Yeah, sit down.
Yeah.
Does it mean that your parents, and in that familial environment of your mother, your father, your brother, your sisters, will you in other timelines be in the same family, mother, father, brother, sister, or
You're going to make me get up only. Well, we go before birth and after death. The essence was before birth and after death. Sharmila was after birth and before death. Now, how are you relating the two? When you are talking about your mother, you are not talking about essence. Whatever her name was, I don't know her name. You understand what I am trying to say? Or whatever name is, I don't know. Sorry. Right? But you are not talking about essence. You see, we cannot grasp this concept only. Supposing I am talking about my mother or my father, his name was Arvind, so I am talking about him, but he is gone. He is an essence. An essence is a planetary combination. You get what I am trying to say? So you are going to attract a similar planetary combination, which will always be the same. Because we can do nothing but repeat the same. Unless the level of being changes, the essence changes, and it attracts a different planetary combination. You get what I am trying to say? So, the only way you can name the essence is its planetary combination, and within that combination there will be a spectrum. And that spectrum, a lot of it will, which end of the spectrum you are in, a lot of it will depend upon which thought you died with. Can you understand what I am trying to say? You are not going to go out of the spectrum. You are going to attract a certain planetary type, a certain planetary condition, which is similar to this condition. But within that condition, there is a higher spectrum, and there is it can be a little on this side, a little on this side. What was I thinking of when I died? Am I coming across? To ask psychiatrists. I don't think there's anyone in the room. To ask a psychiatrist. But he'll say, when a man cannot sleep in the night, if he thinks about sex, he goes to sleep. Right? You ask any psychiatrist, they'll say that if a man cannot sleep in the night, he thinks a little bit about sex and he goes to sleep. Sex is like a drug. Right? It's like a glass of wine. And he goes to sleep. Now, supposing I'm not in the right frame at the moment of death. I'm in a negative frame. I'm not relaxed. And some negative thoughts are coming to me, which are disturbing me. Yeah? maybe today you insulted me, and at night when I go to sleep, I'm remembering that insult. Right? And it's disturbing me. I can't go to sleep. So obviously I think about sex and I go to sleep. Right? Now, say that is happening 100 times more intense. I'm going to die now. And suddenly I remember the insult. Not that insult, but something like that. And it's happening to me 100 times more. And if the last thought is of sex, can you see the carry forward? Then I'm going to go into that end of the spectrum. But if the last thought is of something divine, if I'm doing the Gayatri or something, doesn't matter, I'm mechanical. But in the spectrum which I'm going to get, I'm going to go into the upper end of the spectrum. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So my time is up, but I'll just end with one small story. There was this Zen monastery. And one of the disciples, it was his duty to ring the bell when the period was over, or it was time for lunch or time for prayers. He had to ring the bell. Now one day he was ringing the bell, and the guru came behind him and gave him a big whack with a bamboo, and he died. He died, and that guru was everywhere he was criticized that he killed one of his disciples. Later on, the guru of course left, and 10 of his disciples achieved the truth, which was a very big number for one Zen guru. Usually 1 or 2 disciples get it and he passes on the coat and that goes on. That was a big number. And then people realized it was because he hit that person on the head. Now, can we see this in another way? Can we see this in another way? Which other way could we see it in light of what we've talked about? That supposing it was his moment of death, that disciple who was pulling the bell, he was daydreaming in that moment. He maybe was thinking of sex or something, daydreaming, and he's ringing the bell, and the guru sees that death is hovering over him, and if he dies in this state, then this will be the result. So he gives him a big whack, and he suddenly becomes conscious, and he dies. Now the outward senses, our sensual thinking is the guru killed someone. This is the sensual thinking. But the psychological thinking, the guru put him on the right path. So, anyway, I'll stop over here. Thank you. Jai Shri Krishna. Good night. Close your eyes. Feel the music. Feel the breath as it moves in and out. The breath merges with the blood and moves throughout the body. Sense this wholeness of the body. Feel the whole body through the breath. use our attention. Take your attention to the head, relax the head, forehead, two eyes and around the eyes, the ears, nose, the two cheeks, the lips, the tongue, the teeth, the gums, the chin. Loosen the jawbone. Relax the neck. Two shoulders. The two hands. The back. The chest. The stomach, the two legs. Feel the whole body is totally relaxed. It's completely empty. No thought, no emotion, no feeling, no sensitivity. Just the breath moving in and out. Now in this empty space, fill it with your own being, your own presence. As if from some higher dimension that presence is occupying this space of the body. Feel the presence, feel your own being, just to be, not to be anything, just to be. Just I am. The beauty of amness. Feel the heaviness of being. In that feeling of I, all past and future completely drop. Just the breathing in the present moment and the I, the presence, the meeting of presence and present. Feel the breath, feel the presence. Try to hold both the feelings together, divide your attention. Slowly the music will switch off. Try to hold both the feelings, breath and presence. Try to hold the presence throughout the talk. Slowly open it. Jai Shri Krishna. Good evening. Just one small incident. Some years ago, a cousin of mine was relating an experience to me. He had gone to meet a scientist, Anand Sarabhai, that is Vikram Sarabhai's younger brother, and he asked him, tell us what makes a scientist. So Anand Sarabhai, I just remember that answer, it just stayed with me all these years. That he said that we are like little children. we have no fear in asking any question about anything. We don't bother about what somebody else will say, what somebody else will think. If we want to ask, why does the sun rise in the morning, we'll ask it. We won't bother about somebody will think we are a fool or something. We become like little children. So the idea is ask questions. Don't worry about what you're asking. Keep on asking questions. The two types of questions. One comes from, I want to know. And these are the beautiful questions. And the other comes from, I already know. And these are the ugly questions. These are political questions. These are people who want to discuss something. They already know. And we don't have time to discuss. We are only together for so much time. So in that time, ask whatever you want to ask. I try diplomatically to avoid the other type of question. Sometimes it's not possible. See, I have nothing to prove. I don't want to prove any theory. Something is overflowing and I'm talking about it. Something has been given to me by somebody's grace and I'm just trying to share it. There's nothing to be proved. For 7 years I was with Swami Ramdula, so close to him. And you become so attached to the person. And I travelled all over India with him. One month we used to live in the Kumbh Mela together. And whatever I am today is because of his training. And 7 years, even small things, you can see if I want to change the mic from here to here, maybe I ask him, can I change it? See, so attached you become to a person. And one day he was not there. That's it. And you don't know what to do. And there's a big blank in life. So, and it took months and months to come out of that depression. When I met Taurya Sahib in 1988, 1982 Ramdula Babu died. He left the body. 88 I met Taurya Sahib. And it was just a by chance meeting that I'd gone to a marriage. And a friend's father said that, would you like to come for a lecture? I've been for one lecture, it's quite interesting. And usually if you're following somebody already, the ego comes in between. You don't want to go to somebody else's lecture. And it just happened that I said yes and we went. And when I saw him, I knew that this is what I'm searching for. I knew in his eyes. And at that moment I decided that it won't happen again. What happened with Ramdula. This time with him is limited. It's only so much time. Right? And I've got to make use of that time. And I value this. I want to reach to that state which he has. Maybe I didn't reach there, but at least till before he went, he saw me walking on my feet. So, it's a limited time. And so just keep on asking what you want to ask. Don't worry about me. I'm a lazy person. I keep on dreaming of going back to my farm and doing nothing. So it's only if you ask questions that I wake up from my sleep. You know, my guru had an elder sister. And she was 10 years older than him. And when he was 6 years old, she left the home. She was 16. And She went in search of knowledge, of a guru. And she never returned. And she went in the Himalayas and spent her whole life going to ashrams and learning from people. Most of her life was spent in the Himalayas. And when she was 80, she came back to Bombay. And when she was 80, she came back to Bombay and she still hadn't found what she was searching for. So somebody told her, there's this guy in Bombay, he's giving a lecture. My guru used to give only 11 lectures a year. Every month one lecture. May was a holiday. So 11 lectures a year. And they were given in one small, behind somebody's home there was a small art studio, in which there were 2 rooms in that art studio, and there were 30-40 people would gather. They couldn't fit in one room, so some would be sitting in this room, some in this room, and his table would be in between the 2 rooms, and he would be sitting over there. When he left in 94, 75 people were coming to listen to him. So nobody knew about it. And this Parsi lady, she comes for the lecture, and she's been searching her whole life, and she suddenly sees, this is my younger brother who's giving this lecture. And she'd left the home when so many years earlier, when she was 16 years old. So time is very precious. We meet for a month or 5 weeks, right? So make use of it. Don't throw it away. Okay. Now, before starting today, I want to talk about a little bit about 3 kinds of influences in our life. So the sutra is, yeah, please.
Sorry, before you start today, can I just ask you about yesterday's lecture?
Yeah, please.
We spoke about the essence and the cosmology and the creation. Now, why would the master universe create a clone of itself? And then who would manage a clone and why?
No, I didn't understand the question.
Now, you said yesterday, Bhuva, Swaha, with duplicates of Sattva, Tapas and the divine fragments.
Right.
So why would they make a duplicate of it? And who would manage that Bhuva, Swaha? Why were they created in the first place?
That was what I told him before starting that I
You
knew.
said don't ask the question.
So that's the wrong question.
Okay, I mean, it's fine if you don't answer, but then who would manage that clone or the duplicate? Or who was put in charge to oversee those divine fragments?
See, this is the problem with our logical thinking, that we always think somebody is in charge, but everything happens according to law. And there are basically 2 laws which come out of this. So I'll just go into that again today. Some of it will be repetition. What I said, there was a byproduct called Chitti. In Bhakti Yoga, this Chitti is known as Shakti. Shiva and Shakti. So it is this Shakti which creates the universe, which creates the universe. Now, this Shakti, when it comes out of Shiva, when this Chitti comes out of the divine wholeness, when the divine wholeness became the divine fragment, when Paramatma became Atma. You remember this, no? Yeah. Right. Okay. So, this is the byproduct. This is the energy which makes the whole universe. In Bhakti, we call it as Shiva and Shakti. So, Shakti is in a state of rhythm and balance. She is in a state of rhythm and balance. Now, how to create? So, to create anything, this state of rhythm and balance must be broken. Right? Because in that state of rhythm and balance, we can just say there is inky darkness, nothing else. There is no creation, no existence. So, we said that three forces come out of this Shakti. It is this Shakti only, it is this Chitti only, but this Chitti being in a state of rhythm and balance, right, it cannot do anything, so it divides itself into three. So the first law which creates the universe is the law of three. The law of three. How is it controlled? Everything is controlled by the law of three. Right? Yeah. You said something? No. Okay. So we said that how did these three forces come about? So the first force which came out was the active force. It said, I want to create, I want to fulfill the desire of Shiva to create, Shakti's desire to create. So that is the active force. Then what does it use to create? What does it use to create? What are the means of creation? What is the energy of creation? So another force comes out, the passive force. And the relationship of these forces is very, very important. Right? Supposing we take earth. In the earth there will be more passive force. In the water there will be less passive force, more active force. You get what I am trying to say? So, who will relate how much of passive, how much of active? So, a third force which is called the intelligence, Sattva, or the neutralizing force. Rajas, Tamas, Sattva. Everything in existence, from the minutest pebble to the minutest living organism to the most massive galaxy, is created out of these three forces. Is created out of these three forces. Now, you remember I showed you I just gave you a glimpse of how the forces in the different worlds. One day I gave you a glimpse. You remember that? No. I'll just go through it. In world number 1, say the absolute. And from the absolute comes world number 1. How many laws will be there in world number 1? 3. Right? Supposing we say all worlds, this means. Now, we bring it down. And we say the next one. Say we say Milky Way, one of the worlds. Of all worlds, out of one world, we say the Milky Way will have 3 laws of its own and 3 of the higher. So how many laws will it have? 6. Can you see this as interpenetrating? Interpenetrating. The subtle interpenetrates the gross. Like a sponge is interpenetrated by water. The subtle interpenetrates the gross. Right? Let's take the next word. So we say the sun. Right? So it will have 3 of its own, 6 of this, 9 and 3 of this. Right? Supposing we go further. Say planets. Twelve of this, 6 of this, 3 of this plus 3 of its own. Right? We go one step further, Earth. Sorry. I'll stop over here. 48. Now, what will be the controlling factor? What will be the controlling factor? I told you that day. How is it controlled? What will be the controlling factor? See, in this 6, 3 of this are there. In this 12, 3 of this are there. In this 48, 3 of this are there. This 3 which is controlling everything, everything is coming out of this 3 we call as Ishwar. You understand? So out of 48 laws operable on earth, 3 belong to this Shakti directly. You see how difficult it is to look for Ishwar over here. It is easier here and it is more easy over here. You get it? Because we are coming under more laws. And of course the moon, if we take one more, 96 law. Right? So always there is this controlling factor, the Ishwar, the 3 laws, which is the original 3 laws. So everything is law confirmable. Yeah? There is no one king over there whom you call God who is controlling everything. Everything happens according to law. Still, it is not pure mathematics. It is not pure mathematics. We add one law to it, and that we call the law of this is a science, but it is a living science, so don't try to put it completely into mathematics. When you go to calculate it, there will be some imperfection here or there. So we call it the law of inexactitude. So there were 2 laws which came out. The first was the law of 3. Every manifestation in the universe is a product of the law of 3. Right? Now there's one more law. It's called the law of 7. The law of octaves. Science had to take a telescope and see the planets moving in their orbits. The rishis saw the same thing in a different way. And when they saw this at some time, that is why, what is the other word for the Vedas? What is the other word for the Vedas? It is known as Shruti. The Vedas are called as Shruti, that which was heard. That which was heard. Right? So, they saw that when these planets are moving around in their orbits, they are giving off a certain sound in certain frequencies. And when the first rishi heard that frequency, he noted it down, it became the musical scale. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, do, sa, re, ga, ma, pa, dha, ni, sa. Sa, the next octave. Right? 7 notes. 7 notes. They heard the planets in motion and they saw that these planets are moving in a certain ratio, and that ratio is the law of the universe. The whole universe is following this law. Now, I don't want to go into this year. I don't want to go into this, right? Because it would need many sessions for me to explain this law, and if we are up to it, I'll take it next time. Right? Now, I'll just touch on it a little, but before that, yesterday I said there were 2 theories about how the universe was built. One was that it was built out of Chitti or Shakti, and the other was that it's built out of sound, Omkar, sound. Right? Now let us just take this theory a little. Chitti. Forget this about sound, we'll talk about it some other day. So, what is this Chitti composed of? What is this Chitti composed of? So, they will say it is composed of 5 elements: Akash, Vayu, Tejas, Apas, Prithvi. The 5 elements: earth, water, fire, wind, and ether. And here we have three forces. Rajas, Sattva, Tamas. Now, before going into this, now there will be an order of creation and an order of density. in order of creation, the first force which came out was the active force. The first force which came out was the active force. The second was the passive force. The second was the... So this was the order in which it came out of Shakti. First came Rajas, the active, then came the passive. But in order of density, Sattva has to be in the middle. It has to be in between Rajas and Tamas. Only then it can relate the two. So in order of creation, it will be 1, 2, 3. In order of density, it will be 1, 3, 2. Later on, we will go into what this means. It has a very, very deep meaning, but later on we will see. We don't want to touch it just now. Right? I just wanted to bring it to your notice. Now, what is the relationship between these three forces and the five tattvas? Then we can say the world was created out of this. If the world was created out of these five elements, right? The whole universe was created out of these five elements, which came out of Chitti. But we are saying Chitti, from Chitti, three forces came out. We are not talking about this. Then what will be the relationship between this and this? There has to be some relationship, no? You get what I am trying to say? So we said for any manifestation, the three forces cannot be in rhythm and balance. They have to be in imbalance. So to make the universe, the balance has to be broken. So we say we have Vayu, that is, the wind element is active, the fire element is neutralizing, and the water element is passive. Right? So we have the three forces. Whenever these three are in rhythm and balance, they form one other element called Akash. And whenever these three create a manifestation, when they are in imbalance, they form another element called Prithvi. Has it sort of clicked? You get it? So, out of that Chitti Shakti, three forces came out. These three forces created the universe at every level through the five elements. Now, supposing we say at a certain level it is in balance, so it is Akash, but at a certain level it may look in imbalance. Say we say this is light, but this is light of which loka? Bhuloka, of the physical world. But supposing we are transported to another world, the astral world, Bhuva loka, right? There will be light, but then it is not like this. It will be some other form of light. You get what I am trying to say? This is light, but it is light of the physical world. Supposing we say light is in a state of balance, right? So in Bhulok, this will be in a state of balance, right? But if we go to a Bhuva lok, then light would mean something totally different, even though it would follow the same rules as this light. Am I coming across? Right? So everything came out of the law of 3. Now, everything in the universe does not move in a symmetrical sequence. It moves, goes back, moves, goes back. Everything follows a certain period. Right? So, there has to be one more law. There has to be one more law which tells us how the law of 3 operates. You get what I'm trying to say? Supposing I want to start a new business, right? So I say in the beginning, for the first 3 months everything went well. Then suddenly in the 4th month some problems started arising. You get what I'm trying to say? Now this is the law. Everything does not move on greased wheels. You understand? In whatever you do in life, obstacles come, because you want to do is rajas, the active force, but that which stops you from doing is tamas. And they will both come in our life in a certain law. They will follow a certain law. Right? Now, supposing I leave home that I want to earn so much money. With this thought, I leave home. So, I may have 100 rupees in my pocket, and by the 3rd month I have 110 rupees in my pocket. You get it? But now 3rd month obstacles start coming in. And unless I know how to surmount those obstacles, right, I will start losing money. You get what I'm trying to say? So I left home with the idea to earn money, but in the end I have changed direction. I am, instead of that, losing money because I did not know how to surmount those obstacles. Now this is a very gross example of business, but this is in every pursuit in life. Everything moves in a certain direction till it reaches a certain level of opposition. And in that opposition a certain law is there. How to surmount that opposition and move ahead. Now, when we see the musical scale, if we put one do over here and another do over here, that is sa, 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 and we draw a line, right? Supposing this is 1000 vibrations per second, this will be 2000 vibrations per second. So from this sa to this sa, there is a progression of 1000 vibrations per second. But this progression is not an equal progression. It is not an equal progression. There will be a certain progression in sa to re. There will be a certain progression in re to ga. In do to re, re to mi. There will be a certain progression. But between mi and fa, there will be a certain retardation. There will be a certain retardation, and in the next note it will jump like this. You get what I'm trying to say? And this is the law of the musical scale. We understand it through the musical scale, but this is not the law of the music. This is the law of the planets moving in their orbit. You understand? So can you see, from here our business went, everything went good. From 100 rupees I made 110 rupees. But then in between these two notes there was a retardation and I lost 30 rupees. And if I cannot surmount that, then I will change direction. Instead of going in this direction, I will start moving in another direction. Then another gap will come like this, because again this will move up, and just between the last do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si and the next do, there will be another retardation. And this retardation is much more powerful than this retardation. And at that time I will come here, I will move in the opposite direction. Instead of going out to earn money, I come back home losing all my money. Right? And this happens in every enterprise in life, whether inside or outside. You get what I'm saying? This is the law which governs everything in the universe. I'll just finish with one more thing. Supposing the food which I am eating, I say do. The food which I am eating, it goes into the stomach, it becomes sky. Right? So I say re. Goes from the stomach into the intestines, me. Now can you see there's a gap over here? Right? A retardation. We have said there's a retardation between me and fa. Sa, re, ga, ga and ma, ni vacche. There is a retardation. But here nature has filled in that retardation. We talked about it the other day. How has she filled in? How has she filled in this retardation? By the air we breathe. By the time it comes in the intestines, the food has mixed with the blood. Right? And we breathe air, it goes into the blood. The blood from the air meets the blood from the food and pushes it further. It overcomes this gap. You get what I'm trying to say? If you remember that day, we said this was magnetism, that was this was this, right? That day we took all that. So in this is nature has provided this push over here by us breathing air. But when we breathe in air, the air goes do, re, mi and stops there. Nature has not pushed the air further. Now the push has to be done consciously. Similarly with the impression, I am seeing you and the impression is coming in. The impression doesn't even go to do, re, mi, it stops at do. But this I'll take some other time. This is what we call the law of octaves. The law of octaves. Everything in the universe is governed by this law. Right? So you were saying what controls it? This law controls it. This law controls it. Where to start? Okay, I'll just go through some things. Because the sutra is Pratyaksha, Anuman, Agam, Pramani. Pratyaksh means in front of the eyes. Agam means inference. Anuman means inference, and Agam means, just now we will take it as the testimony of somebody who knows. The words of somebody who knows. Right? Okay. So we take the eyes for all the senses. So we have two types of thinking, sensual thinking, and if we take Anuman as psychological thinking. Two types of thinking. And the simple example is that we do not see God. We infer God. We do not see God. This is psychological thinking. We sense there is order in the universe, like he was saying, that there is order in the universe, and there must be some intelligence behind this order in the universe. If there was no intelligence, there could be no science. Right? So there has to be some intelligence, something which is working behind all this. We cannot see that with our eyes. So, what we see with our eyes is a fact. What we see with our psychological thinking, where we go, is the truth. The fact is not the truth. The fact is comprehended by the five senses. Tathya and Satya. What is in front of the five senses is Tathya, not Satya. Right? But to realize Satya, we need a different kind of thinking, that is psychological thinking. We can see the sun, we can admit the sun, but we cannot see God even with our best telescopes. Right? So for that we need a different kind of thinking. So to mix these two types of thinking would be totally wrong. Patanjali calls the first type of thinking as pratyaksh, the second type of thinking as anuman. Now both the thinkings are in different time. I went into this yesterday. Both the thinkings are in different time. The sensual mind is based on three-dimensional space and one-dimensional time, linear time, the sensual mind. And it can only see a part of the truth in that. It cannot see the full truth. Yesterday I gave you the example. Truth is like a bag of coins, out of which the five senses can see 3 coins. The rest of what is in the bag has to be seen by some other mind. The senses cannot see it. So any miracle the senses are seeing is not truth, because the senses cannot see truth. The more we learn to expand our thought beyond the senses, go into another dimension of time, right? The closer we will be able to get to truth. Sensual truth cannot bring a change in us. Only psychological truth can bring a change in us. So, from here we will separate, we will go away. Right? So, with the senses you can no longer hear the same words. They can only be heard in this time and space as things are happening. Once it is over, they cannot be heard with the same senses. The eyes cannot see the same scene. The ears cannot hear the same words. The five senses always live in the jail of the present moment. They cannot go out of the present moment. Right? We all share the same space in relation to the five senses. We share the same space, but in psychological space we could be miles and miles away. Even sitting here, you are thinking of something totally different. You're miles away. You get it? So in that psychological space we may be somewhere totally different. If I love someone, then in my psychological place that person may be very close to me. But in my physical place, he or she may be far away. So in which dimension does this psychology exist? Definitely not in the dimension of the five senses. We are talking of another dimension of time. This is eternity. We are talking of another dimension of time. Because some things can be so close, right? If I love someone, then in my psychological place, that person is so close to me that I may feel I'm talking to him or her. And he or she may be really thousands of miles away, right? So what is it that is happening in that psychological space? Where does our memory lie? What is memory? We're going to go into it in the next sutra. What is memory? Memory is some impulse is traveling in the brain and it is taking us across time. We are moving across time. And we are recalling something which the senses cannot. The senses cannot go back into that time. They have to be in the present moment. They are stuck in this linear time. But definitely through memory we are able to penetrate into some other time. What is thought? How do we explain thought? Thought is real. We can't say it's not real. We say the furniture has length, breadth, thickness. Then what does thought have? Does it have length, breadth, thickness? What does it have inside? When we are lost in thought, completely lost in thought, we are totally oblivious of this three-dimensional world. But still we are in some world. We are not in this three-dimensional world. We are in some world inside. So even though thought cannot be seen, it is invisible, it is intangible, still it exists somewhere. So to move in this dimension, we need psychological thinking, and all religious teaching is given in psychological thinking. It has nothing to do with sensual thinking. If the Mahabharata says Dhritarashtra was blind, they are not talking about a sensually blind person. They are talking about something totally different. If they are saying Duryodhana said that I will not give this much of land to my brothers, they are not talking about real land or real kingdom. They are talking about something totally different. And to understand that, we need a different kind of thinking. Right? But if we go to understand it sensually, then it becomes a farce. So our body remains in the dimension of the senses, but we can move in other dimensions, and when we do it with consciousness, a totally different world opens up. So if we learn to expand our sensitivity, right? We say Krishna picked up the mountain Govardhan, right? Now, one is you can take it as something meaning sensual. He really took his hand and picked up some mountain. It seems very nice. It's a good story to tell our grandchildren. And the other is to go deeper into it and see what it means in psychological thinking. Go means the senses. Vardhan means expand the energy of senses. When you expand the energy of senses inside, go to deeper levels of sensitivity, suddenly new meanings start, which are hidden in that, start opening up. New things start becoming clear. So the senses open outwardly, but to go in, we need different kinds of senses. Here you can be physically near me. In the inner world, it is affection which decides how near or far a person is. See, affection is the raw material for love. So we live in two times at the same time. We live one in the time of the five senses, which is moving moment to moment. And we have another way of living inside in a totally different time. Our essence is in that time, not in this time. The only way we can move into this inner time is, the first thing is that if we have stopped becoming a victim of negative states. As long as we are becoming negative and negative again, our attention keeps on moving out, it will never be able to penetrate these inner states. Now we say a blind man cannot see. Similarly, a person who does not have a developed magnetic center will not understand any of this. You get what I'm trying to say? You have to have some inner magnetism to understand what is being said, otherwise it will just all pass over the head. It won't mean anything. Such a person will be stuck in his false personality throughout his life. Nothing will change. So we must learn to think in a new way. In the Bible there's a beautiful word called metanoia. And metanoia, the normal translation is repentance, but the original Bibles were written in Greek, not in Latin. And when you take that word in Greek, it means to think in a new way. Metanoia. So if we live just an ordinary conventional life, what the family says, what the racial opinions are, what tradition says, then all this has no meaning. Then we are not moving inside, we are not asking questions, we are not using our psychological thinking, we are just following what the senses see. Then we are psychologically asleep. And this is the condition of man. He is awake in the five senses, but psychologically he is totally asleep. Don't think that thinking in a new way means to revolt against the parents, or to have some new age way of thinking. That does not mean thinking in a new way. Thinking in a new way means to be free of the law of the pendulum. Whether you think against your parents, whether you have a new age of thinking, whether you think in modern ways of dress, you're still stuck in the law of the pendulum, to and fro. This is to go beyond the law of the pendulum, to bring something new in your life. Now the third word which Patanjali uses is agam. Agam. There is a conscious circle of humanity, and there is a communication with that conscious circle of humanity. That is why I brought in this cosmology yesterday, to show you that there is a conscious circle, there is an area where all memory is stored. When we talked about the centers, we talked about 5 centers: intellectual, emotional, moving, sex and instinct. 5 centers. And then we added 2 centers: higher emotion, higher thinking. Higher emotion, we said feeling of truth; higher thinking, knowing of truth. It is only when these higher centers open up that we come into contact with this conscious circle of humanity. Then something comes from there. It is totally different. Now that is Agam, the words of the enlightened one. Now, it's very difficult to talk about all this, because it could mean anything. When I say 2 higher centers open up and you get something from them, it could mean anything. In the time of Caliph Omar in Baghdad, one man declared on the streets of Baghdad that I am the Paygambar, I am now the new Paygambar, Muhammad is the old Paygambar, I am the messenger, I am the prophet. And now Muhammad is cancelled because I am here. I am the last word, the message from the divine. This is it. So anything can happen when I say that, if the 2 higher centers open up and you start getting messages. So he's telling everybody, forget Muhammad and look at me, I am the new Paygambar. Of course it was Baghdad, it was not India. Otherwise India he would have definitely been accepted. Right? They would have given him all kinds of garlands and everything and made an ashram around him. My Guru used to tell us a beautiful story. A beautiful story. He used to say that there was this man, and he told his father that I don't want any of your money. I want to look for my own way in the world. And so he said, the father said, at least take something from me. He says, okay, then you give me one donkey. He gave him a donkey. And he goes with the donkey into the desert. And he says, I'm going to earn my own fortune. And on the way, the donkey dies. So he buries the donkey and he's crying over there. He's buried the donkey and he's crying over there. And one caravan is passing by. And they see this person there crying over this mound heap over there. And they think some big Paigambar must have been buried over there. So they come and they put some food and they put some agarbatti, right? Some big saint is buried, so they come and put this agarbatti and food. And so he's so happy. He says, I've got food and all that. And then another caravan comes and they put something. And in 20 years, he has a huge ashram. All the godowns are full with food and he's like a king, and people come and they say, Manta, if you do so many days fast over here, this will happen in your life and that will happen in your life. And he's so happy. And by then his son comes of age. And his son says, Father, I don't want any of your money. I want to go out in the world myself. So father says, you also take a donkey. And he goes, he takes the donkey. And the donkey dies. And again he covers it up and another caravan comes. And another 20 years pass. And the father, he learns that there is some other ashram somewhere, some other big temple where people go with prayers and their prayers are answered. And so he says, I must go and find out. So he goes there and he sees his son become a big guru, right? Big ashram. And he says, how did all this happen? So he says, this is what happened. I was going in the desert and the donkey died. So he says, oh, but 40 years ago my donkey died. And this is what we are doing all the time. We go there and we do some puja and we do this thing and we don't know where the donkey has died. It's the story of our life. So in the time of Caliph Omar, this person, he says that Muhammad is now outdated, I am the new messenger of God, but in Baghdad they are not going to tolerate that. It's not India. In India they would say, who knows, maybe he is the messenger. Maybe he is. It all works in India. But Mohammedans, they won't tolerate it. They say, so Caliph Omar took him and put him in prison. And unless you stop saying this, you're going to be beheaded. I'm giving you 24 hours to reconsider. You have to say you are not the prophet and only Muhammad is the prophet. Then you will be released from jail, otherwise you are not going to be released from jail. And if you insist on your madness, after 24 hours you will be killed. The man laughed. He said, look, this is written in the scriptures. The prophets will always be treated like this. They are always persecuted. Now he was logical. Muhammad himself was treated like this. So this is nothing new. So the man said to Omar, this is how things are natural. This is how I am going to be treated. So in 24 hours you can find me the same. Nothing is going to change. Only He, God, who has appointed me, can change anything. Now whilst Caliph Omar was talking with this person, another person was chained to another pillar over there. He started laughing. So the Caliph was wondering, why are you laughing over here? So Oma asked him that, why are you laughing? So this other man said, he's absolutely wrong. I never appointed him. After Muhammad, I have not sent any other messenger. Right? So if I start talking about higher centers, but within us there are two higher centers, and we can communicate with those higher centers. Now, just to finish this on Agam, what is Agam? We've still got 10 minutes more. See, there are three kinds of influences in life. The first is A influence. They are created in life, they arise out of life, they come from the mechanical side of life. They include everything we know about in life, our business, our money making, our science, our sports, our politics, all the interests of conquering somebody else, all the intriguing novels of crime and power, everything. Our interests in wealth, in position, in displaying our possessions, everything, that all comes under A influence. These are mechanical in origin, mechanical in action. This includes all our necessities, from food, clothing, housing, law and order, everything. It all comes under A influence. See, there's one very important case in the Gujarat High Court, and the day before the judgment, I was sitting with the judge she was going to give the judgment the next day. And he said, how do you see this? So I said, in spirituality, the person who commits the crime is punished on the spot. Man cannot punish him. Man cannot punish me. If I have committed any crime, that pattern in me becomes so strong that I am bound by that pattern, by that sanskar binds me. The very committing of the crime, the law takes course of its own. You cannot punish that person. You can only show compassion. Of course, she didn't show compassion in her judgment. What I'm trying to say is that all this comes under A influence. They are mechanical in origin, they are mechanical in action. All what we read in the newspapers, they are all A influences. These influences can develop personality and false personality. They have nothing to do with essence. But in life there are other kinds of influences, and they have nothing to do with business, money making, sports or politics. They come from a circle of humanity which is not a part of mechanical life. And we see traces of this in all ages. In all ages. And we will call this as B influence. So there's an A influence, mechanical, and there is a B influence. B influence in its origin is not mechanical. But when it comes into life is mechanical. When we read the Mahabharata, it is mechanical. But in its origin, when Vyas gave it to Ganpati, it was not mechanical. Try to see. He had to pass it on to Ganpati in a special way. So those higher influences can only be passed on in a special way. See, when you are writing, it is the moving center. But what is coming into Vyasa is coming from the higher thinking center. And that higher thinking center is working in a different way. But when it filters down to the moving center, it's going to take time. You understand what I'm trying to say? So there's this whole story of Vyas dictating to Ganpati. There's this whole story. And this is a very typical story of how the higher centers, when they come down into the lower centers to be written down, that the higher influence becomes B influence. Conscious in origin, but when we read it, it becomes mechanical. We think it's just another story. So in all ages we find these traces in literature, in religious writings, in all the fairy tales, in all the other literature we read. Somewhere or the other it is disguised in some form or the other. Now, the more we go into our psychological thinking, the more we expand our psychological thinking, we will be able to get more and more out of this literature which is B influence. Whether it is reading the Mahabharata or whether it is reading any other literature of that kind. So, the more we become familiar with these ideas. Of course, as time changes, the nature of people changes, it takes on different form. Today, if Vyas was to come, definitely he would not write the Mahabharata, he would write it in some scientific language, right? But the truth would not change. So the general level of man's intelligence, as it changes, this B influence takes another form. So these B influences do not arise in life, they arise from some other source. But when they come into life, they become semi-mechanical. So we can read the same literature in a mechanical way, and if we put on our psychological cap, we can move into that literature and extract the rules of finding our own consciousness from it. Now we said when humanity also is not one. When we talked about man, we talked about man number 1, man number 2, man number 3. Man number 1, the one who is stuck in his instinct and moving center. If he's stuck in the moving center, he has to do something the whole day. He can't sit for 1 minute. If he's stuck in the instinct center, he only loves to eat, drink and be happy. Actually, this line in eat, drink and be merry, it goes to Epicurus. And Epicurus lived in Greece maybe 2000 years ago. And today he is considered as the height of materialism. Eat, drink and be merry. But it's not like that. In those days, the king of that country went to meet, he was very angry when Epicurus gave this sentence, eat, drink and be merry. The king said that, is this all in life? And he went to, and Epicurus was staying in a kind of commune with his followers. And the king went there. And the king went in a very angry mood. But when he went there and he stayed for a few days, he saw that they were living such a beautiful and simple life. Eat, drink and be merry. They had bread, but they had no butter to put on the bread. But in that dry bread, they would eat, drink and be merry. They would eat, drink and be merry. And suddenly the king realized that to celebrate life, you don't need anything. Even in the simple things you can celebrate. Epicurus maybe was one of the most spiritual men ever. There was no meditation, there were no prayers, there was nothing, just simple living. Eat, drink and be merry, and still he was drunk with God. But now we use the same, his words we use today as the height of materialism, which really doesn't represent what that person was. So we divide man into man number 1, instinct moving, man number 2, emotional center. Person is an emotion. They want to keep on feeding you, they want to keep on looking after you. I remember once, for some years, someone was traveling with me and he would look after me so well, right down to when I put my, go into the mosquito net at night, he would come and tuck in the mosquito net like this. And sometimes I was wondering, can love become aggressive? Can you feel love is aggressive? I mean, it's sort of as if somebody is, even love becomes violent. You feel inside that this is too much. These are people stuck in the emotional center. Right? So somebody is in the instinct, moving, emotional. Somebody is thinking all the time. So thinking center. But these are all men who are stuck in mechanical life. The intellectual is not better than the emotional, and the emotional is not better than the moving and instinctive. They are all on the same level. Then there is man number 4. He is in between these men and he has not yet reached the other shore. This is man number 4. Arjun is man number 4. Right? And he's trying to leave this shore, he's trying to wake up, he's trying to bring in consciousness, he's trying to have all his centers work in a balanced way. Intellectual works at the time of intellectual, emotional works at the time of emotional. Right? When you're eating, the instinctive is working. Right? Each of the centers is working in a balanced way. That is man number 4. And then comes man number 5, 6, 7, where the higher centers open up. This is the conscious circle of humanity. They have entered into a different... It's very difficult to imagine these people. And that is why for a disciple it's very difficult to understand what the Guru is. My Guru never worked in the present moment. He didn't know what the present moment was. He always worked in eternity. So if he did something now, the consequences would be many years later ahead. And as time goes by, I see that suddenly, where did this come from? But this seed was sown by him at that time. Can you see what I'm trying to say? This is the conscious circle of humanity working. They work in a different time. They work in a different way. Right? So these... When they give something to mechanical man, it comes from them, we will call it C influence, but it comes down to mechanical man, it becomes a B influence. So A influence, mechanical in origin, mechanical in action. B influence, conscious in origin, mechanical in action. And the C influence, sometimes it can be given to some disciple. Sometimes. There was one beautiful... Tibet had 4 tantric masters. The time is over, just I'll finish this. Tibet had 4 tantric masters. They were Tilopa, his disciple Naropa, his disciple Marpa, and the very great tantric master of Tibet, Milarepa. Now this tradition was started with Tilopa. And Tilopa has written a beautiful book called the Maha Mudra. And in that, the first lines of the Maha Mudra are, Maha Mudra is beyond all words and understanding. But for you, Tilopa, for you, Naropa, it can be said. So the C influence can be directly given to a single disciple. Or it can be kept in its pure form in some ashram, in some school, with no contact with the outside world, no contact with the mechanical influences of life. There it can be transmitted directly. There can be a way of passing it on directly. But that is in very rare conditions can such that happen. After Christ died, he wanted Peter to continue his work. And Peter was not yet ready. So Christ came a couple of times to him and gave him certain. But Peter had not yet still reached that stage which Christ wanted him to reach. And in the last meeting when he came to him, not in the physical form, he came to him, he said that within a few days they are going to arrest you. So this is C influence, it's a direct transmission. And he's telling him they are going to arrest you, and they are going to crucify you the same way. They are going to nail you to the cross. You do one thing. You tell them to put the cross upside down. So, now this is a direct transmission. This cannot be given to everyone. Right? He could only give it to this chosen disciple of his. And when you're upside down in the headstand, that is the one position in which normally a person cannot die. Cannot die. To die, the body has to fall down. But if the inner soul breaks open the crown chakra and moves out of that, then he can die in that position. So Peter had reached maybe to one of the chakras, and maybe some little journey was left behind, and Christ said that you tell them to turn the cross upside down, and he knew in that turning of the cross upside down, the soul will be forced to open this chakra and leave. And that which was incomplete in his lifetime would complete in his death, that last step of consciousness. But this is a C influence. It is a direct transmission which can only happen between the guru and the disciple. Such things can happen in a closed environment. But where life influences come in, such a transmission is not possible. So we have three kinds of influences. That is why we say, Patanjali says, right knowledge comes in three forms. Pratyaksh, in front of the senses. Anuman, with our psychological thinking, and Agam, the direct transmission. Three sources of right knowledge. I'll stop over here. Thank you. Jai Shri Krishna. Good night.